Okay. Well, this is take 3. Not sure if this is going to work or not. I guess we're going to find out whether it records. I mean, I can always upload it to YouTube. Right now, the problem that I'm having is that the feedback is it's playing my stream back to me, or at least the sound is playing back to me. And there it goes again. Okay, so a couple things. I'm going to launch into content, and hopefully it'll let me launch into content. It keeps playing my own audio back to me, so I'm not sure why it's doing that, but I will figure it out, and I will get past it. I have a lot of stuff that I really want to talk about today that I'm really excited about, so we'll see what happens with that. My stream back to me, or at least the sound. That should be interesting. Okay, so welcome to episode 2 of the Waffle Press, or at least attempted episode 2 like 4 times of the Waffle Press. I am excited to be with you. My name is Matthew. I'm the Sage of Sorcery, and you can follow me on the Sage of Sorcery Twitch channel, and my YouTube channel is also called Sage of Sorcery. If you type in Sage of Sorcery Waffle Press, you'll be able to find me. And in addition to that, you can follow me on Twitter. I am on Twitter. I am Sage of Sorcery 1 on Twitter. I'd love for you to follow me. So I'm going to launch into the content, and hopefully this is recording. I've stopped and started the stream 4 times, and if it's not, I'll do it again, and that's okay, and I'll keep working through it because it's not perfect, right? So we'll see what comes about it. Anyway, that being said, the thing that I want to talk about first is what works and what irks. That's the first category of my show, and then I will talk after that about lore you can't ignore, some D&D lore, and hopefully we'll get that through. And then after that, we will talk about Down the Rabbit Hole. That's my third category, or my third little, I don't know, I guess third segment that I want to do. And in Down the Rabbit Hole, I'm going to go ahead and talk with you about some of my ideas about where it's going, where I feel like the show could go, and crazy ideas that I might have. I have some ideas for things that could have happened or would have happened, some ideas that Chris might want to use. I don't know. We'll see. Not that I think Chris is going to watch this or anything. So I want to thank Pro Jared for being the first person to show me some love from the Dice Camera Action crew, which was pretty great. He said that he really liked my character and player analysis, which I really appreciated. So thanks, Pro Jared. Also, shout out to Adam E.T., Eulalia, Emily Wallbank, Lance Lancaster, who are my first YouTube subscribers. And also to Iced Americano, who made the first YouTube comments on my first video, and Marie Elisa, who is my one follower on Twitter other than my best friend. So anyway, we're going to launch into that a little bit. I want to start with what I feel like works, and then we'll talk about what irks. So first things first, I know you want to jump into Evelyn, so I don't know if you were paying attention when I did this before, but and there's been enough silence, but I know you want to talk about Evelyn, but we're going to wait. We're going to have a moment of silence for Evelyn first. Moment of silence for Evelyn, everybody. And we're good. Okay, thank you. So, moment of silence for Evelyn out of the way. We will talk about Evelyn. I promise you, I've got a lot to say about it. I have a lot to say about quite a number of things from Dice Camera Action, episode 86. It was an exciting episode. I feel like it was one of the best episodes that we've had in the show. Certainly it was emotional, and there was a lot of emotional climax, and we'll talk about that. But first, I'll take some advice and jump right in. So what works? Simon's talk. Okay, I got to tell you, Simon's talk, right at the very beginning, my first reaction was I hated it. When he started in with that, I'm a weird boy, oh my gosh, I was like, oh man, really? We're gonna get Pinocchio. So I was like, okay. It bugged me, but I want to tell you why I think it works. Because while at the time I wanted to reach through the screen and seltzer spray Chris, or maybe go burr, burr, and do the honk nose on him, I feel like he had a really tough creative choice to make, because we all wanted to see something different, right? I wanted something that was a little bit more adult, but he had a tough choice to make, and Chris went with childlike but dark, which is true to Piddlewick's character in the Tome of Strahd. In that, Piddlewick says, in the stream, he has Piddlewick say, I can tell jokes! And that really makes sense if you are up on the lore of who Piddlewick II was. He's actually a puppet recreation of the first Piddlewick, who was a jester that Strahd's brother and his fiancée, Tatiana, who was reborn as Irina in the book, in the show also. So Piddlewick was this recreation. And while Tatiana and Sergei, Strahd's brother, loved the first Piddlewick, the jester, thought he was hilarious, they didn't feel that way about the doll. They thought the doll was creepy and it made people uncomfortable. Well, the doll got jealous. And so in the lore, I hope this doesn't spoil it. If you don't like spoilers, you're on the wrong show, okay? Also, if you like things that work technically, you might be on the wrong show anyway, but whatever. So that being said, Piddlewick pushed the original Piddlewick down the stairs and killed him, okay? So it was always a murderous little creature, and he did it out of jealousy, the Tome of Strahd tells us. And so it makes a whole lot of sense what ended up happening, because so what Chris ended up doing with it, right? So anyway, I thought it worked because of that. He says I can tell jokes because that's what Piddlewick wants. Under the character traits for Piddlewick, one of the things that he says is I'll do anything to get love and attention. And then his flaw is I do bad things when I'm sad, which, okay, bad, like murderous, I guess. So Chris kind of went with that. He can tell jokes. And yet listen to one of the jokes that he told when he was talking about, how do you make a clown sad? Kill his family. And we were like, ah! Okay, and so we got Strix and we have Diath, and they reacted to it, right? But I don't know if everybody got the significance of it, because Piddlewick is really a murderous little creature, right? I do bad things when I get sad. And I know everybody thought it was like horrific, but I don't think they caught on to just what Chris was doing. So kudos and thumbs up to Chris. I know we all didn't get what we wanted, but it was a tough creative choice, and he stayed true to the lore of the character. I'm a big lore fan. I don't know if you've picked up on that already, so I agreed with it. For the record, I'm with Diath. It's a child killer, y'all. Also, does everybody remember that it set the Waffle crew up when Paulton was going to kill them? It set the Waffle crew up, right? I mean, it just basically led them to their doom. He can communicate. I don't know if he can read and write. I don't remember reading about that. But he certainly could have communicated danger, right? But he just leads them to Paulton, and he set them up. And so I'm with Diath. You don't come back from the whole murder a child thing, I don't think. And Piddlewick has murdered a lot of children. Piddlewick has murdered multiple people. So that is something that we want to take into consideration. That Piddlewick is a murderer, and yet he was, just desperate for love. So anyway, we will look at that. I'm with Diath. I think, and to be honest with you, I think Jared was always planning on offing at Piddlewick, or Simon, I guess you want to call him. I think that Jared was planning on off him. If you look at Jared's face during the stream when everyone else is like, oh, yay, he's got a mouth and it's interesting. And Anna was so excited, and Jared was like, and I'm telling you, I'm jumping in his mouth. Jared's going to kill that thing. Diath was going to take him out. So I'm with Diath. I think Simon should be taken out. I'd take him out. He only has 10 hit points. I don't know if he's advanced or if he's leveled up in that time, but Simon's only got 10 hit points, and that's one critical strike for Diath. So if he comes back, I don't think Simon's going to come back, but if he does come back, I do think waste him, Jared. Waste him. He's a murderous, vile little creature. I can't believe Evelyn can suspend her lawful good and paladin long enough to have delusions about Simon, being a sweet little child of theirs, and maybe it was just funny, and that's okay. That's an artistic choice, right? This is a show. Anyway, it was interesting. I do think I'm with Diath. Okay, hashtag I'm with Diath, whatever. I will also say something else with Nate. Dude, Nate, what the heck, man? What the heck? It was another rich roleplay possibility that got handed over to you, and Chris and Anna were clearly prepared for more. Chris had Simon say, I would love to tell you my thoughts, and Anna told us that she had things. She was like, this is me preparing. We know they were prepared, right? And so what does Paulton do? Paulton says, Simon, I only have one thing that I want to say to you. Are you ready to go? Good, let's move on with the story. And I'm like, oh man, poor Chris. So I don't know how much Chris had prepared. I don't know if Chris had, whole lines of things that he had prepared, but I do know that it could have gone in a different direction. Now, I will also say, though, I did think that it worked, and I think that it worked because Simon, Simon represents Paulton's humanity to a point, and I think that is really worth exploring because Simon is safe. Paulton does not show his affection. He certainly doesn't show it to Evelyn, who is like, like reaching for affection and tossing out hints, left and right, and giving him every opportunity to express his love both to her and to the Waffle Crew, right? So, in any case, it's interesting. I do think it was true to his character, though. Simon is safe, and as a lot of people will tell you who've experienced trauma, Simon is a safe place for affection because he can't talk. That's why they bring in animals to work with trauma people sometimes. Animals are, they love, they forgive much more easily. I'm sure Holly would have a lot to say about this if she were to pick up the topic. And it was interesting. But I do think that Simon's easy. Well, Simon can talk now. And that introduces all of the variations and vagary of having a relationship with people. And it's not easy, and people are messy, and they're messy. Also, I don't think that Nate is ready for that either, which is an interesting topic that we could bring up. Nate always backs off when we get into an emotional climax of some kind, particularly if it's the least bit sweet or sensitive. He runs straight to the dark comedy, which is fine if that's Paulton's character, but I wonder how much of that is Paulton's character and how much of that is Nate's character. So anyway, it's interesting. I also thought Strix's reaction was perfect. When he gets a mouth, the Raven Queen shows up, they get a boon. I mean, how often in your campaign do you get a boon from a goddess, right? It just doesn't happen that often. And if it does happen that often, I think you're cheapening the experience. So I did think that Strix's reaction was perfect. She's like, we needed a portal! That was excellent, Holly. I loved that. Because they did need a portal. And what was the reward that they got? Well, Nate needs Simon to have a mouth. Why does Nate need Simon to have a mouth? What does Chris think that Nate needs Simon to have a mouth for? I'm really not sure. I'm really not quite sure what Chris was thinking in regards to that. But it was overall an interesting little conundrum there. So in any case, I thought that was interesting. I loved Strix's reaction because really they'd be wandering the Shadowfell forever. How are they? None of them are portal masters, or I don't know, have a prestige class or whatever. I don't know. None of them have portal travel as one of their things. So I did think that worked. I'll tell you what else I thought worked was when Strix was throwing snacks at Diath, and she's like, boom, an hour later, boom, and she's throwing snacks at them. I think, speaking to trauma again, like most traumatized people, Strix cannot relate normally to people. It's fascinating, right? So the open and honest communication is not something that she is either comfortable with or something that she is really capable of engaging in, right? So it's interesting to me, but Strix she's not comfortable with that. And so her throwing the snacks to get his attention, I thought it was absolutely perfect, right? Of course she's going to throw snacks. Diath's reaction to that situation and scenario I thought was perfect also, because Strix tries to tell him, I know magic, I can handle it, I can protect you, and the thing is, Diath, he says, I know, but he doesn't mean it. And not only does he not mean it, but, Diath, he can't tell her the truth. Because the truth is, Strix is wonderful and useful, and we love her, but she's not the wingman that you want in the foxhole, right? Because she panics. She can't control her emotions. She's a hot mess, and we love her for being a hot mess. But Diath can't trust on her or rely upon her in that way. And so it ends up being a frustrating scenario, right? So Diath doesn't quite tell, but you can see Jared doesn't have him say much, and he just kind of does a little affirmation. But anyway, I thought Jared handled that really well. I also liked Strix's when she's like, too bad the Mercy Killer's done. Like, that was hilarious. That was such good acting. I loved that. That was Strix at her best, and a dark sense of humor, and her life has been dark, and she is traumatized. So the creative way in which she relates to people and the things that she does to keep safety are things that I think Holly just plays up and does a great job with. Anyway, moving on. So that I thought worked. Now to the moment that we've all been wanting to talk about. I don't know how many of you are still left in here. I think there's just one person watching now. I will do better. I will try to make sure that I have this up and running and figuring out whatever technical problems we have. But now it's time to talk about Evelyn's death. I think her death was the most amazing moment on the show, possibly in the entire show. I do think she's dead, and I do think that she should probably stay that way, at least for a while. And don't hate on me anymore than, for the technical problems, but I do think she should stay dead. Honestly, and the reason is because I feel that there's no better way to end Evelyn's story. And I want to tell you why I feel that way. First of all, point number one, the soulmonger to date, I think, is the most profane thing we've seen in the D&D cinematic universe, right, as Anna brought up. It's not just killing, but it's eating souls and ending them. Oblivion, right? The God's servants have to be the one to stop it. Now, I know what you're thinking, and a lot of you are thinking, well, any adventurer, right? It doesn't have to be some religious person. And that's fine, except the gods are the most powerful force of good, supposedly, the good powers anyway, in the universe, right? There are other good beings, but they're the ones who have control over the prime material plane. And so their servants, they have to at least try to be stopping evil. That's why when you read Forgotten Realms book, there's usually a cleric or a priest or somebody who's been sent by a power to stop and to intervene. And Evelyn's a perfect example of that. So you look at that, she enters a hopeless plane of impending oblivion. And what does she say when she gets there? She says, there's always hope. And she says that to a famous church leader, Zaris. I've never heard of Zaris. I've never read about Zaris. Maybe she's in one of the books that I have. I don't remember. I think if she is, she's forgettable, I think. But Evelyn shows deference to this leader in the church, but she's the one who shows the greater faith in that moment. And that is why I think it works and why I'm so impressed with it. Also, she leads them in prayer. And she leads the prayer, not this matriarch of the church. Evelyn gathers everyone together and says, hey, we're going to pray now. We're going to reach out to Lathander. You know why? Because he's going to help us, because I have that faith in him. She borrowed from Matthew 18:20, which says, where two or more are gathered in my name, there will I be in the midst of them. There is power in unity of faith. I felt it. I felt that power personally, so I'm a witness of that power. But why? Because when everybody's united in that good purpose, then God can move a whole people forward as opposed to just one person. We're not all down here, independent entities. We're down here organized into families, into communities, and we're meant to work and rise together, right? So I loved that way to go, Anna. That was so classy, like bringing that in. And once again, repping my peeps, right? But that's why some cities get destroyed, like the flood in the Bible, and some cities like the city of Enoch get raised into heaven, right? Because people move together in one direction. So I thought that was significant, and also why it worked as a moment. Also, I feel like if it works, her death works because it cheapens her sacrifice if she's raised, and it lessens the power of her offering, right? The only thing that we have, everything comes from Lathander, right? Or everything comes from God. So the only thing that we have to give to God is our will and our time. That's all Evelyn can offer. She believes everything else that she has comes from Lathander, and she does offer them. She offers them freely. Evelyn's the one who steps up to confront the fire giant. Evelyn is the one who runs right up to Strahd and is like, my friends are going to get away, but I'm going to take you on, death or no death, right? And it's remarkable. So I do love that. Elaine Cunningham, who is the author of Evermeet and Elf Shadow and some other Forgotten Realms novels, was on the Candlekeep Sage forums, and she was talking about, in answer to some complaints by the other people on the channel, and she was saying that that it's nice to have raised dead and resurrection for the game mechanic, and that's what it was created for. But when her viewers or her readers were asking for Lyriel Barony to get Fjoider raised in her book Windwalker, she was saying that can't happen. His death had meaning in the book. And so because his death had meaning, it would cheapen it if we could just raise her. And dice camera action is a show. Yes, it's a game of D&D, but it's also a show. And it's not a TV show, but it is a show and it is a story. In some cases, it's more narrative than game. So I mean, I guess it depends on where you fall on. But anyway, I think that's why it works. And then 5, my other thought is, how can she top this? Do you want Evelyn to get killed by a gnome or a troll? Because that is not something that I really want. Anyway, Anna, you were incredible. Your song was beautiful. I thought that it was a beautiful way of saying goodbye to Evelyn, and I thought it helps all of us to say goodbye to Evelyn also. However, you'll forgive me. I would like to answer your song for a song, because I don't want to see Evelyn go. I mean, if she goes, I'm behind it 100%. If she comes back, maybe I'm behind it 70%. But here's my song answer to your song. Once upon a dream, you were heaven sent to me. Could we begin again? Once upon a dream. Boom. There's my video. There's my song response. It's not fancy. Most of this is talk, but that's how I feel about this. I do want to begin again. I want Evelyn back. I mean, I know it cheapens her death. I just defeated my own point. But anyway, I'm conflicted. Are you conflicted? I'm conflicted. Okay. So anyway, there you go. Yeah. There's the problem also, in that if Evelyn doesn't come back, we have the unfulfilled ship with Paulton, right? So to be honest with you, though, I'm not sure that it was ever going to work. Partly because Nate is a performer, but I don't think that he's a thespian. And I don't think that he's ever going to be comfortable with returning that affectionate moment. Like, it just gets too emotional, you know? Or it gets too outside of the realm of his comfort zone. Every time we see Nate come up with an emotionally tense moment, he goes to dark humor. There's never any sincerity. And that's fine if that's Paulton and that's Nate and that's how comfortable Nate is. And Nate strikes me as a new player, or at least new to this kind of role play, to D&D. So I don't know that we were ever going to get what we were all hoping for, you know. And we were all hoping for it. Jared and Holly are holding up signs saying "kiss her," you know. So anyway, I do think it works because of all of those things. Now moving on to what irks. Okay, so what irks? The tentacle monster, Chris. You killed Evelyn with a land-bound squid. No, it doesn't work for me. I don't like that. You know, squid monsters, anything that you put tentacles on, I don't care unless it's a mind flayer. You know, if it's a grell or an aberration of an aboleth, I'm like, oh, it's a tentacle monster. They all kind of, in my mind, end up, blending together. I don't know if that's not. If you don't feel that way, let me know. I'm sure. Put it in the subreddit. Put it on the YouTube video after I put this video up, since I doubt there are many people, if any, watching right now, because of the technical problems. So that being said, I didn't like that. I would have rather have Evelyn go out and battle against Strahd. Or had Evelyn go out in battle against a priest of Bane, or something, or some other great evil. Not have Evelyn go out after Ahab's sea monster. So I don't feel like that worked. I know the dice play into things, but I also think Chris was trying to TPK the entire party. I think that was part of his plan. Sensing the Ring of Winter was interesting. So my question was, did Miranda sick the creature on them? Right? So is it a natural monster? And then I thought, is Miranda evil? She's the player. I didn't get any of that from the player, but maybe they failed an insight check. I don't know. I don't know. Chris's comment when he was saying it's an appropriate challenge rating, I don't think I'm buying that. I think he meant to TPK them, but all of them. I don't think he just meant to do it to Evelyn. And then I think he meant them all to come back together, and Evelyn to have no construct body, and then maybe, that's how it works. I think they were traumatized, and I think that because, remember the cartoon intro to the game, where we're looking at all 4 of them wind up at the end of the cartoon intro, all 4 of them wind up in the Soulmonger. I think Chris meant to go there. I think that was the planned ending. I think some of the character choices and dice rolls may have changed Chris's mind. I don't know. I'd be interested in asking. I also don't know if he'd tell the truth, right? He's a good dungeon master, and a good dungeon master always holds some things back, because you might use it later, or you might come up with it later. I say, but it irks, right? So the squid monster irks. The The fact that it just killed Evelyn and didn't kill them all and let them all come back to life, because if they're all coming back to life, it doesn't cheapen it, or at least I don't think it does. I hate the death curse mechanic. I hate it because I don't like anything where I feel like the character is not facing the challenge as him or herself. So when you take Diath down to like 15, 12 hit points or whatever, he's not really Diath in a combat situation. And maybe it's the munchkin in me, but I don't like it. I don't like it on a video game when it's like all of a sudden, oh, you've dropped all of your equipment and been kidnapped, and you know you'll get it back later. Most of the time you do. Oh, it's in a chest at the end of the chamber. But it irks because for the entire experience, you're like, okay, well then why did I go to such great lengths and put all mine together to get the staff plus 5 of bird slapping or whatever? I don't know. Anyway. That drives me nuts. I'm not a fan. So that irked. Another thing that irked, Paulton's prayer. I did laugh. I did think it was hilarious. But the deal is this. We were so excited when he started praying to Lathander, right? I was like, oh my heck! Oh, Paulton's praying to Lathander! And it was such an emotionally climactic moment. You saw Anna, she went off the screen, right? So Anna goes off the screen, and Chris was playing it to the hilt, too, right? Evelyn's head rolls up to Paulton's foot, and the eye pops out. I'm like, oh, perk for Kristens. You were tugging on them heartstrings. And so, there we go. But then Paulton goes to the dark humor. He can't say, I love you in character, and I don't think Nate can do it, right? So the next best thing would be him beseeching Lathander on her behalf, begging. I wanted to see humility there, something like maybe, please don't take her from us. Please don't take her from me. I mean, we would have melted. I mean, Anna would have melted, right? We all would have melted. Instead, we got comedy anger, because I think that's what Nate's comfortable with. It was funny to me. I did like that, but it's not what I wanted. It reminded me a little bit of Sister Act, too. In Sister Act, if you've seen it, where Whoopi Goldberg's character is hiding out in a convent, and they ask her to say the prayer, and she says, oh, okay, and the Reverend Mother's like, no, and then she mixes up the Pledge of Allegiance with Our Father and also with a wedding ceremony. She goes and, we ask you to give us this day our daily bread, and to the republic for which it stands, and by the power pronounced in me, I am pronounced as ready to eat. Anyway, it's hilarious, and that's kind of what it reminded me of. I will tell you what else irks. I think Diath needs some more roleplay love. Jared needs the spotlight. It's time for Jared, and I don't say that just because Jared threw me the first love from Dice Camera Action. Anna's been very kind to me in the few exchanges I've had with her online, just through Twitter and through the subreddit. But Jared needs some love. Let's see something about the keys, right? The consequences of him handing them over. The Cannabinator needs to take center stage. So that's just kind of my feel about that. I did tell you something else that doesn't work or irk, but it is interesting to me, is watching Chris and Anna war for narrative control. They're both writers, and they're probably both actors. They're both creative people, and they're both storytellers, right? And they both want to add as much detail and flesh this world out so we can go in with them, right? And so inevitably during that time, there's a war for narrative control, but I always laugh when I see it. The first time I laughed really hard was Morning Glory, when, she had this idea of the relationship Evelyn's going to have with Morning Glory, and it's not what she gets. What she gets instead is dead zombie horse. And I think that, I don't know, poor Anna. And then we see it again with the bone. Evelyn's like, there's a bone sticking out of her, and Chris is like, I'll take over here. Not only is there a bone, it's Meat Hook's bone. And Meat Hook's bone is covered with gore, and you are now covered with dead body viscera, walking dead. And Anna's like, oh, and and it's not going to come off. Even with a good scrubbing, you're going to need lye. So I don't know. Anyway, the war for narrative control makes me giggle. You get all these creative people together, and there's bound to be some of that. And it's fun. So thanks for letting us watch that, guys. Okay, so anyway, those are my thoughts about the episode, about what works and what irks. You can message me in the subreddit. Tell me what you thought if you get a chance to watch this on YouTube, since I had so many technical parts at the beginning. Let's jump into lore you can't ignore. So I want to talk about Evelyn here, and the fact that I think that Evelyn is chosen. Chosen of a god. I think that's the upgrade that Chris was referring to. I think she's going to get some of Lathander's personal power invested in her. I think she carries a shard of his power inside of her, and I think that's how she killed the god baby. And I want to talk to you a little bit about chosen. So the idea for chosen comes about because, or at least it's well known because of the chosen of Mistra. Mistra is the goddess of magic, and at some point, the first incarnation of Mistra, she had several children. And the children that she had were, she possesses the body of a mortal, and then she has 7 daughters with this man, and then one of them has to become a drow, so she's got to like jump ship, baby. It's weird, right? It's convoluted. But drow are so cool, we had to have a chosen that was drow, right? So in any case, Mistra's chosen are the most famous, and they're invested with a shard of her power, possibly because Mistra, as the goddess of magic and the goddess, because of that, of possibilities, is possibly the most powerful goddess of all. And because of that, Lord Io, the overpower, supposedly maybe demands that she invest some of it in mortals. And so she creates these chosen, and that's kind of what made it famous. And a lot of the story unfolds in the novels, and I'm going to show some of them to you, okay? So we get all of this god information starting in this series right here. This is the Avatar trilogy, and it's a fun read. So you've got Shadowdell, and then it goes to Tantris, and then after that it goes into Waterdeep. And in these books, you get, in the Avatar trilogy, the gist of the plot is the gods have stolen the tablets of fate, which are these tablets that have the description of the duties and the powers of all of the deities inscribed upon them, right? So it's this sacred deity artifact. And Merkel, Baal, and Bane steal them because they think maybe that's where Lord Io gets his power from, the overgod, right? And so they steal them in that trilogy, and gods die. Obviously, Baal died. That's a big part of the Baldur's Gate thing, that you're a Baal child, moving on. But the gods die, and then we get a new incarnation of Mistra. Cyric becomes a god, or Cyric, or Cyruck, however you want to say his name. And then in the whole process of that, we get a lot of lore about the gods, about faith, and about powers and whatnot. Moving on. So in that series, that's what we get. The series continues on in these 2 books, first with Prince of Lies, and then with Crucible, the Trial of Cyric the Mad, right? So the drama between the mortals who became gods continue in this. In this book in particular, Prince of Lies, we learn what happens to someone who dies in the Forgotten Realms. So it's interesting. When a soul leaves the prime material plane, when somebody dies, they go to this place called the Fugue Plane, right? And the soul on the Fugue Plane is supposed to do something to catch the attention of their deity. So Meliel, the god of songs, they form choirs. Leviatar's priestesses, the goddess of pain, start beating on themselves and whatever, and that's kinky. But anyway, so they get into that. And then what ends up happening is we follow a soul through this process, right? And on the Fugue Plane, a couple of things can happen. Either you can be claimed by one of the minions of your god, or you can make a deal with the devil, and they sometimes come and steal souls by making deals with them. Demons sometimes come and do a soul raid, because souls mean power, right? And then also, if you've never worshipped one of the powers, if you've never worshipped a god, you join the faithless in the wall of the faithless around Kelemvor's City of the Dead. And if you play Neverwinter Nights expansions through, then you run into that City of the Dead, and you run into Bishop, who is a character from Neverwinter Nights, and he is actually stuck in the wall because he never worshipped any power. And for a power to claim you, they have certain laws about that, but you only need to have prayed to someone, and sometimes they'll claim you even if you weren't really faithful because they want you for some reason. That happens in the story in the books. Anyway, so after that, after you die, let's say you get picked up by a god, you become what is called a petitioner in the god's astral realm. And that means that you are petitioning, you are working to merge with a deity. So you lose yourself completely to that. So that means that deities are essentially big, huge soul vessels, which makes sense. The god baby is a power in embryo form, right? Gods are vessels of tremendous astral power and also soul vessels. Now, interestingly enough, the rule is that only one power can kill another, right? That's why Tiamat, or Takhisis, keeps coming back from life, because you can't kill her. Mortals can only banish her influence, banish her from the realm. So anyway, you get that idea. It's interesting. So there were some questions about whether or not Evelyn was a proxy, and she's not a proxy, and she's not an avatar, because those are different things. An avatar is when a god either creates a form to send away from the astral realm with their consciousness in it that they're attached to, kind of like an astral cord, and the avatar can go out and represent them, or they can possess someone who can become an avatar. But if they do that, the god is in the brain controlling the machine, right? So anyway, she's not an avatar. Also, the idea that she's a proxy. She's not a proxy, and I'll tell you how we know that. We know she's not a proxy partly because of these two books right here. These are books that were made possible because of the Avatar trilogy. Anyway, and I will go into that in a little bit. In these books, because Bane dies during the Avatar War, there is a book wherein Bane is... someone's trying to bring him back. Her name is Walinda. And she tries to bring Bane back by finding this resurrection artifact. Because supposedly he... he knew he was going to die, right? Supposedly Shar brews a potion of night, and he figures out that he's going to die, so he plans for it. And Bane is resurrected, so clearly the plan worked, right? But in this book, Walinda of Bane is trying to resurrect him. Well, she ends up ditching Bane. And then later on in this book, we find out in Timora's luck that she is now serving Bashaba. Now I want you to listen to this description of what a proxy is, okay? Because I think it's really interesting. And if you like lore, that's going to be a big part of my show. So I have a lot of Forgotten Realms books, and this is what I'm the sage of, right? So it says, then she had imbued Walinda with some of her power. We're talking about Bashaba, making Walinda the goddess's newest proxy. It was a gift that Walinda had never experienced before. It gave her a window into Bashaba's bitter heart. Suddenly, Walinda understood Bashaba completely and agreed with her completely. Her will had been subsumed by the goddess's desires. The gift had left Walinda with a feeling of complete ruthlessness. She would now do anything for Bashaba, even die for her. So, Evelyn would die for Lathander. I mean, obviously Evelyn has died for Lathander, or in his service. But Evelyn is not a proxy, because Evelyn still has her will. And also, if you like books, Lathander does some shady stuff in this. I don't know if you like books like that, but I enjoy them quite a bit. So if you are interested in that, go for it. I find that interesting. But I do think that Evelyn is chosen. I think that's the upgrade Chris was talking about. I think that if she comes back as a chosen. That would be interesting. I would love to see, if Evelyn comes back, I would love to see her chosen and see her begin to show the powers that she has that are granted by Lathander. What does a chosen of Lathander do, right? It's not the same thing that a chosen of Mystra would do. They'll have different powers. If you like the Sundering trilogy, or quintet or whatever series, there is actually a really cool fight between the chosen of some gods. There are 3 chosen of Sylvanas, a druid circle, and a chosen of Umberlee, the goddess of the sea. And they go at each other, and it's a really cool scene. So anyway, check into that if you're into it. But anyway, that's just a little bit of lore I wanted to jump into and give you some info on. Also, there were a couple more things. If you like Ravenloft, Ravenloft started with this book, okay? Vampire of the Mists. This was written by Christy Golden, and this is where we are first introduced to Strahd von Zarovich. So if you like Strahd and you thought he was interesting, this is a great book. Now, I won't lie to you, it is a D&D version of a classic. This is Dracula on D&D steroids, but it's written really well. And I think this book helped jumpstart Christy Golden's career. She ended up writing Star Wars novels after that. And getting, and then moving on with some of her own independent projects. But I think that this probably helped jumpstart things. She wrote 3 Ravenloft novels. She also wrote this one called Dance of the Dead, which is also terribly interesting. But in any case, so this introduces the original Domain of Dread, which I find fascinating. If you want to learn about Strahd, you want to learn about what a Domain of Dread really is, how they work, it's all in here. The Old Svalich Road, the poisonous gas around Strahd's realm, his history. Now, another interesting thing that's in here is the vampire elf, Jander Sunstar. He's the protagonist of this book, and he actually wields the holy symbol of Ravenkind at one point, which Evelyn had, who knows. So anyway, it's interesting to me. I would like the Waffle crew to run into Jander Sunstar. Jander should have died at the end of this book, but we find out in a later source manual of villains that Xander Sunstar was swallowed up by the mist because the dark powers weren't done with him. He was too interesting in character, and they didn't want him to die. But he actually lives with Strahd for a time, so he goes in. You get a way insight into Strahd's character, and there's Vistani in here, curses. It all starts with this book. And then Dance of the Dead, Christy Golden wrote this too. It is also another excellent book. She has a really interesting heroine. If you want to learn more about the gods, I would suggest this series of the second edition D&D books. This is Faith and Avatars. This is a great source manual. Has a ton of stuff in here. This is every god in the human pantheon, every major god. And then its companion work was this, Demi-Human Deities. And the final book in the series is Powers and Pantheons. And this is the one, this book right here is where you can read more about Ubtao or Ubtao, depending on how you want to say his name, which is interesting. So if you want to find out more about Ubtao, you can read this right here. It is a fairly interesting book. Now, what's nice about it is that there's all kinds of stories about the gods in there, the history of their wars, their relationships with each other, and it's a good read. So that being the case, or that being said, each one of those books was also cool during second edition days because they all had a specialty priest character class. If you want a priest who really seems like Lathander, there's a whole set of Lathander spells, Sunburst this, Mega Light that, or whatever, and it's awesome. So check it out. I don't know, you might like it. I think it's pretty cool. So check it out. Very cool if you're interested in more of that lore. Anyway, moving on. Now I want to finish up with Down the Rabbit Hole. And this isn't exactly, because of the technical issues I had tonight, this isn't how I presented the lore the first time. I think it was better the first time, but you live and you learn, tech issues and whatever. I'm still learning how to do this, and I thank you for your patience. Those of you who may have tuned in, I'm so sorry. Now, for those of you who are going to watch this on YouTube, come down the rabbit hole with me, okay? So I want to talk about the Raven Queen statement. She said Paulton's fate had been stolen. I think it was stolen quite obviously by Miranda. I think Paulton was meant to become a Dark Lord. But I have a couple of problems with that because Paulton is not evil enough to be a Dark Lord. The whole idea behind a domain of dread is that they're kind of prisoner realms for horrid people. People who have turned their back on the light and done such horrific things that it's difficult to imagine them finding any kind of redemption, and that's Strahd, right? So the domains of dread are populated with people who are doing these horrible, awful things. And I don't think Paulton really qualifies. You do get interesting domains of dread in here. Strahd is the domain of dread in Vampire of the Mists, and there's Misaroy something is the domain lord in Dance of the Dead, and he's a zombie lord, which is but he's very interesting. Has a lot in common with Strahd, but he's also very unique as a figure. He's not the villain of the book, but it's interesting. So I don't think Paulton really qualifies, to be honest with you. He's not wicked enough. Would have been interesting, though, and I wondered if this wasn't Nate ready to quit the show. Make me the villain of the next series, and then I bow out when they kill me, or I re-roll. I don't know. You always wonder what's going on because everybody has a life, and they've got things that they're dedicated to. I think Chris had some big Dark Lord ideas. I don't think it was his intention. I think he wanted to play it up a little bit more. I could be wrong about that. Maybe Paulton wanted to come back. We have another couple of things here at play. Mr. Shambleface was lost, and Chris loved that. Ooh, he was scheming all that madness. And now what we're going to get, I think, at some point, probably not in this season, maybe at the end of the season, is we're going to get the revenge of Strahd, right? Because Strahd has never been bested like this. He's been driven into defeat, and read Vampire of the Mists if you want to see that, but he's never been bested. And not only that, they locked him in a doll, yo. This fool is not going to turn his back on that. And now that Chris has possession of the doll, he's going to get out, right? Why? Because a good dungeon master is not going to leave that on the floor, okay? So Strahd's going to get out. Maybe he'll send people. He's only been out of Ravenloft once, and that was during the Grand Conjunction. There was some kind of Grand Conjunction event in 2nd edition D&D where all the Dark Lords escaped the Shadowfell domains of dread. So anyway, it's interesting. I want to see that. I don't know what's going to happen. I want to see Strahd get out. Okay, I think it should be interesting. Also threw an interesting idea out to Anna, when she was doing her stream on the gift, the dice bag gift she was making for Chris. She streamed live, and she was gracious enough to allow her fans, those of us, to pop in and ask her some Dice Camera Action questions. And she answered them, and I said, I'd love to see an Elseworlds episode where maybe we go back and replay an episode where something has changed. Some examples of that being, wouldn't it be cool if we go back and Strix gets the ring? Miranda doesn't. Or maybe Paulton ends up creating a dark domain, and they've got to adventure their way through it before they can find him. That would be way cool. I would love to see that. Also, I had this weird thought. Now, like I said, this is down the rabbit hole, so anything goes. Wouldn't it be cool if we had an Elseworld story? What if Anna had prayed to Lathander in that moment? And this occurred to me while I was watching the episode. What if she'd prayed to become a ring on Paulton's finger? Like, okay, bear with me. I know that sounds weird, but she was already a construct, right? So Evelyn was a construct. What if she prayed to Lathander and said, Lathander, let me take on a guardian form, and I will fight the Ring of Winter's influence over him from his hand, right? Wouldn't that have been cool? Then we could have like an ice battle between the Ring of Winter's, like, astral whatever, Jean Grey, Professor X kind of mindscape, and we could have an ice image and a paladin, Evelyn, who shows up, and we could fight it with charisma checks, and it would have been way interesting. And then they can fight, and eventually maybe she convinces Paulton to take off the ring, right? That would have been so cool. She becomes a presence in an artifact that is protecting him, or helping him at least to fight back. I thought that would have been cool. Anyway, it's just an idea. We're down the rabbit hole, so we can talk about all kinds of stuff. At some point, if we ever have anybody in the chat that I'm able to interact with, you can bounce your ideas off me, and we'll talk about them during Down the Rabbit Hole on that. So anyway, I thought it was a great episode. I have mixed feelings about whether or not she comes back. I'm curious to see what you think. Make a comment in the YouTube channel if you'd like to bounce some ideas back and forth. I'll answer you, because my audience is very small. Thank you so much for those of you I saw who had tuned in to watch. I'm so sorry it didn't go well, but I'm not quitting. I am going to be coming back, and I will get all this tech stuff figured out, and we will continue watching Dice Camera Action, which we love. Thank you to the actors, to Christopher Perkins, and to all those of you who are part of the community. I love you, we love you, and thanks. Have a great night.